Hi, everybody. My name is Martin, and I am an alcoholic. And thank you, Nay, for taking the meeting today. And it's a definitely a blessing to be here today and give my experience, strength, and hope. You're looking at a miracle, nothing less. I am indebted to this program. AA has saved my life, and it has brought blessings beyond what I could dream. Um, I I just let some of you know that there's some pretty rough things that I'm going to talk about. There's a few people that have passed in my life that's very difficult. I'm going to try not to be graphic, but it's a big part of my story, and I just wanted to let you know about that. Um, so getting into it, my name is Martin, and I grew up. I was born in Oakland, California, and I have a sister. Her name is Shirley, and my mother is her name is Peggy, and my father, his name was Kenneth, and we were in Northern California, middle-aged family, and my father was a, pipe fitter at Hunters Point. Used to work on at the shipyard. Used to work on the ships that used to come into the San Francisco Bay Area. My mother was she used to stay at home and take care of us. And until they're split, that was a very difficult time in my life. And then my mom ended up being a librarian at the middle school that I went to. That was a drag. But anyways, growing up, um, one of the things that was very difficult for me is there was some shame in my family. That's a big important part of my story. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was the type of alcoholic that he would drink on Friday night and Saturday night. That was it. He didn't drink Sunday through Thursday, but on Friday night and Saturday night, he drank nearly out of control. And it was a big part of my growing up was this dealing with my dad in so many aspects. The fights and getting thrown into closets and the fights that he had with my mother. It was really a rough situation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about this because through my program, through my fourth step, my sponsor and myself, we were able to identify when it really got out of control for my dad. And um, so as I went through school, one of the biggest things for me was it was hard enough for me to make friends as a young kid. It was hard enough going through and doing that. But as a young kid, around 12, 13 years old, I had two very traumatic events that happened in my life. And one of them was the passing of a young cousin of mine. And it was really a tragic event. It was not actually a passing. She was killed, and so this is something that really affected because it was on my dad's side, and it really affected my dad really bad. And so because of that, um, my dad's drinking really got out of control. And after his drinking really got out of control, not only did his drinking get out of control, but he stopped taking us to see his side of the family. So his side of the family, I stopped seeing all my cousins, aunts, uncles. It was a big part of my life growing up, and the the criminal aspect on that side was pretty bad, and that was a big part of it. And I understood, but it was still difficult because I was 13 years old, and all I knew was something. I'd heard the details, and it was really bad. So that. that traumatic event, along with another traumatic event that had happened to me, really affected me. It affected my ability to connect with my friends. One of the things for me was is I began through my fourth step. I began to understand that that was when the spiritual malady, the symptoms of my spiritual malady begin to manifest as a little kid. Was the fact that I couldn't connect with any kids. I shut down. I couldn't connect with any kids. I couldn't make friends with anybody. I had shut down. And so as time went on, I began to open back up, and it was very difficult for me to connect. I felt very insecure about myself. I felt very inadequate. I didn't like myself, and that was the key component of my spiritual malady as I began growing up. And so for me is the only way that I could figure getting into my early teen, the only way that I could figure that I could make friends, that I could become friends with girls and so on was is that I had to figure out how to talk, how to beat the guys in conversations, how to be more witty, how to beat them in a debate, how to I had to be the best in athletics. And I had to learn and figure out how to talk to these girls. And so for me, what it was a toxic way of life. It was my mental obsession every night growing up as a young teen, in my mind, constantly trying to figure out how I was going to talk to this guy, how I was going to be more witty in a conversation. I would literally make up conversations that would never happen, but I'm trying to figure it out. That was the toxic life I led growing up in my teen and even into my adult years. That was what my that was what my toxic life led me. And my fourth step really as I began to understand what it was that was driving me freaking crazy, that is the biggest part of what saved my life was that right there. It's coming to understand the awareness of what it is that was driving me freaking crazy. And sure enough, I was able to identify what that was. But continuing on, in my high school years, I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand what was the driving motive behind me. I just didn't like myself. So one of the things was in high school back when I'm 62. I'm almost 63. So one of the things for me when I was in high school, we had what was called the burnout section. So in the burnout section was where everybody used to go out there and smoke cigarettes in high school. And so I went out there one day, and I had a couple friends out there that I was talking with, and they said, "Hey, we're going to cut school. Let's go. We're going to go smoke some pot." And I've never really did that. And so I jumped in with Rocky, and Rocky's car was the baddest car that I've ever seen. It was a Shelby GT 350, white with the blue stripe. He had the super tuner with the Jensen 6.9s in the back, and he was playing Highway to Hell. We were just cruising. I was just loving it. I couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden, I started smoking this pot, and then it took me away. Now, I want to let you all know that the beginning of my story deals with drugs. However, the later on, the last part of my life is very, very much involved in alcohol, and I'll be getting into that here shortly. So for me it was like that's what took me away. It's like Calgon, take me away, and that's exactly what took me away was pot. That's how it all started, and it was like I didn't care about anything. I'm listening to music. These guys are loving on me. I'm just there. I'm having a good time. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm good. And so that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my downfall. And it was a very, very hard fall, beginning of a very hard fall. So as I fell in love with drugs, the alcohol was there too because I used to go to kegger parties, and it was all about getting blasted. Is if I went to a kegger party and I got there late, well, I had to stay by the keg, and I had to down probably 4 or 5 glasses just to catch up with everybody. That was my mind thought back then. And so for me it was it was the need to to use the drugs and alcohol, and the ability to have that, not only that power, but everybody else wanted the drugs and alcohol. That was how it helped me overcome my inadequacies that I felt about myself. That was how I dealt with my spirituality as a kid. And unfortunately, it got worse as I left high school, as I went on into my adult. It got into selling drugs, and obviously we know that any type of addiction, as it continues on, what happens is that it gets out of control. Step one, it was unmanageable for me. My drug use, my selling of the drugs, it got so bad. It got so bad where I was beginning to use all of my profits. I began to use all everything. So when the drug dealer came by to collect, I had nothing to pay him because I've been using it all. And so for me, I nearly got killed because of it. I was dealing pretty heavy in crank at the time. My drug use got really bad. I needed money, and then that's where I got into heavy crime. This is a story. This is a story. This is not a story about your average Joe. This is criminal behavior. I needed money, and so I ended up beginning to get into robberies. I took my dad's gun and I went in and I started robbing liquor stores, Circle K's, you name it. I started robbing it. I was coming back with money. That was another addiction. Robbery is an addiction because when you pull a gun on somebody and you point it at them and you tell them, open up the cash register and give me the money, they're going to do exactly what you say. That was a rush in itself. That was an addiction myself. And as many robberies as I committed, I am surprised it didn't go as bad as I'm surprised it didn't go worse than it did. So after quite a few incursions in jail, and after quite a few incursions in prison, I've got four prison numbers. And so my in and out, they call it the revolving door. My in and out of jail and in and out of prisons were pretty rough. I mean, it was getting into the point where I was even harming people. And so for me, in the late 90s, or I'm sorry, in the early 90s, um, actually it was the late 90s. I finally got out and I finally got away from the drugs. I don't know how. I think what happened is that I replaced that addiction with drinking. This is when I met Margaret. And Margaret had three daughters. One of them was very, very young. You can see them right here. One of them was very young, and two of them were already late in school, graduating and in college. And so Margaret and myself, we started doing great. I was in a normal relationship. I was in a family relationship. I drank, and it wasn't really bad, and it lasted for a few years until um until um seven people over a period of 5 years passed in my life. Three people in Margaret's family, her cousin, her nephew, and her aunt, which was very, very difficult. Um, and at the same time, my uncle, who was like a dad to me. My grandfather, right after Katrina down in Mississippi, I carried his coffin. My grandfather, my father, my father passed. He had cirrhosis of the liver. I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and finally the last time took him. And I thought for sure that this is what was going to take me. And then finally, my 16-year-old son. Um, I had nothing left after that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing left after that. Um, like my dad, it changed me. Just like my dad, it changed me. Um, I, uh, I really didn't care. Really didn't care. All I did was is continue to do what my dad did. My dad worked and drank. He worked and drank, and that's all I did. I worked and I drank, and that was it. There was some times that I stayed on the couch literally for months. I didn't care. I didn't care. I had no way to cope. All I thought was, you know what? If I can get to the couch and I can get that drink, I'm good. I'm good. And that's exactly what I did. Until I ran into some very, very difficult situations at work. I was actually running a trucking company at the time, and I had 17 big rigs. It was a big deal. And so what happened was is that my drinking really kind of sent the trucking company over the edge. And so what happened was is we had to downsize. And so my drinking got so bad that I um, I got into a 70-mile-an-hour head-on collision. I was drinking at work, and the drinking got so bad, I got into a 70-mile-an-hour head-on collision. Um, now, Now, I was told that when I hit the intersection, I sideswiped somebody to begin with. I had passed out. And when I hit the intersection, they said I sideswiped a guy, and then I hit the guy, and they approximated about 70 miles an hour. So I probably hit the intersection going a lot faster than that. Um, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to God I didn't kill anybody. And I didn't know until the next morning when I woke up. Um, I, I, all I remember from the accident was the bag blowing in my face, and then a cop coming and saying, he says, "You all right?" And then he went back to take care of them, and then I was out, and then I woke up in the hospital, chained to the bed, and so I had no idea what was going on. But I found out that I didn't kill anybody. And when I found out I didn't kill anybody, they didn't arrest me. And I couldn't understand why. I still to this day don't understand why they didn't arrest me. I guess because there was some more tests or whatever. I don't know. But they didn't arrest me. They let me go. And I called my ex. She came to pick me up. She knew something was wrong because something had happened in that intersection. She was tracking my phone, and then she seen that I was at Kaiser Hospital in Richmond. So the thing was is that um, after that accident, you would figure that would be my bottom, but it wasn't. It wasn't my bottom. And so even though I was on the couch and I had a scar, I had a scar from the seatbelt all the way across. I was still thinking about drinking. I needed to drink. I still needed to drink after that. And in the mail, I don't know, a couple weeks later in the mail, I got a warrant for my arrest for the DUI. It was $1 million warrant. $1 million. Well, I had some felonies from back in the 80s. And that's not even counting this one right here that I've dealt with. I had to go to a sober living house to fight this. I paid a lot of money. I paid around $50,000. I'm not sure if it was more than $50,000, but I got a very high priced lawyer, and I knew I was in trouble. And so what happened was is that while I was at the sober living house, I began to drink. I began to drink. I began to pay off the guy who used to test me. I was paying them off. The only time I knew that I could drink was like about 4:30 in the morning. I had to get my bottle the night before, and then at 4:30 in the morning I would go to work. I'm the only one there. I would kill the bottle off, and then I'm good for the day. And then I would say by about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when I got back, I tested okay, but I still paid the guy off because I wasn't sure. And so this is where I was first introduced to the 12-step program. I started learning about the 12-step program. I started hearing from everybody that everybody used to do step 1, 2, and 3, but when it came to step 4, nobody would do step 4. And that was always something that was interesting to me when I was doing this. And you want to talk about somebody who's a fraud? I am the biggest fraud that you can imagine, because when I began to learn about these meetings that I was going to every day, I was still needing to drink, and I was still drinking. And then all of a sudden, I started talking a good game. Everybody thought Martin's doing a good program. Boy, he's all that. So they took me out of the 2 houses and they put me over into the apartment, gave me more responsibilities. Well, sure enough, I hung myself. I sure enough hung myself real bad. I used to take my phone and I used to put it in the bushes, and over there by the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I would go across the street to the bar. And so that my ex, she was tracking me, so she knew I wasn't going over to the bar. And so sure enough, while I'm at the sober living house, my case, the 70-mile head-on collision, was in another county. It was in Contra Costa County. I'm in Alameda County. So while I'm in the sober living house, I got 2 more DUIs. 2 more DUIs I got while I'm at a sober living house. Nobody knew. So I woke up the next morning in the cell. They let me go. The first time I totaled my truck. I'm driving it right now because insurance paid $35,000 to fix it. Who knew? Anyway, so I totaled my truck into a light pole while I'm at a sober living house. Took the pole out, right? They charged me $2,000 for the pole, took the pole out, totaled my truck. And so that was 1 DUI. The second one, I was driving my Mustang, and I just had to go get it and pick it up at a parking lot where they had took me out, tested me, took me to jail. Then they let me out the next morning. So obviously, one county didn't know what the other county was doing, because I was on bail. I was on bail from a DUI with injury. That's what I was fighting, was a DUI with injury. 70-mile-an-hour head-on collision. It was so it's a crime itself is if you commit a crime while you're on bail from another crime. It's a crime itself. But they didn't know. So I told my lawyer I got 2 DUIs. And he's going, "What?" So he had to come out to this county, and then he took me into court, and we pled both those DUIs out. And then I had to go back to court, and I had to take the deal that was on the table before they found out what it is that I did in this county. So what happened was they, at the point, they had offered me 6 years in prison. But the problem was we were trying to get him down. He says, "Just don't get in any trouble." Well, I got 2 more DUIs, so how much more trouble can I get in? So anyways, I had to take the deal on the table. So I ended up doing 6-year prison sentence down in Chuckawalla, which is down by the Mexican border. And I ended up, since it was they call it a non-violent because it was just DUI. Well, not just DUI. I don't want to minimize it. It was a DUI, so they called it a non-violent case. And so I ended up doing 3 years on 6. This is where I ended up going through. I started going through the program. I had a sponsor. However, the situation was a little different. It's a little different than it is out here where you see everybody going, getting a sponsor and going through the 12 steps. It was basically that. However, it was more biased towards a fourth step. The reason why it was biased towards a fourth step is because everybody in prison in California, they started letting everybody in prison out. Before, during the 90s and the early 2000s, they weren't letting lifers out. Now they started letting lifers out. So all the lifers wanted to get out of prison. They had all been in there 20, 30 years. So in order to get out, they got to go through a committee. And in order to go through the committee, they have to do a fourth step. They had to identify their defects of character that led them to their life crime. I went, oh, well, cool. That's exactly what I want to do anyways. So I went through my fourth step like 7 times. I did my fourth step twice with AA, twice with NA, twice with Criminal and Gangs Anonymous, and I did it once with this program called The Awakening, which is like your step 4 on steroids. And so for me, it was still a biased program because that's what everybody there was focused on. You know, when you know, I wasn't, you know, even though I went through a 4 step, I wasn't going to tell anybody in prison what all my crap was. Hell no, I wasn't going to talk about all that shit in prison and then all of a sudden let everybody find out. That wasn't going to happen. So that was one reason why my program there was dishonest. Another reason why my program wasn't very good is because I didn't understand what recovery was about. I didn't understand that I'm a Christian. My higher power I choose to call God, through Jesus Christ. But the thing is for me is I didn't understand how to apply my higher power in my steps through step 2, 3, step 5, 6, 7, and 11. I didn't know how to do it. I just thought my belief was over here and my recovery was over here. So for me, it was like I just took God for granted. You know, I read the steps. I believe in God. I'm good. I didn't understand what recovery was all about. So one, I wasn't completely dishonest. I took God for granted, and I wasn't going to tell my 5th step to anybody, you know? And and my amends was all indirect. Oh, well, I can't make a direct amends to anybody because I'm in prison. So, you know, it's like, I'll just be a good guy after that. So my whole program was weak. My whole program was dishonest. And I didn't understand what recovery was all about. When I got out of jail, I dropped everything. I dropped the Bible, I dropped recovery, and then I white knuckled it for 2 years. White knuckling it is a real thing. The torment that I endured, white knuckling it, was worse than the incarceration I had in itself. All of my family, all they want to do is drink. Birthdays, Christmases, Thanksgivings, you name it, that they're going to drink, you know? And it was like me, everybody knew that I wasn't going to drink, but I didn't have a program and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with this pity that I felt. And so for me, one of the things is that I couldn't handle it. And so as time went on, I ran into another traumatic situation. I totally separated from my ex. When that happened, that was it. I was done. And then I relapsed. And after relapsing for probably another year, that was when I finally got into my 4th DUI. What I'm here for now. So my 4th DUI, in probably all of you in most places, 4th DUI is not good. And I can tell you right now that I was really looking at some shit. I was really looking at some shit, especially after doing a 6-year sentence, 3 on 6 for a DUI with injury and having some felonies from back in the 80s. So what I couldn't believe is that they let me go. Right? So I'm in county jail and they let me go. However, they put ankle bracelets on me. So the ankle bracelet I had on me, I had a GPS on one leg and I had an alcohol monitor on the other leg. but they still let me go. I couldn't believe it. And so for the next 2 years, I fought in California what they call is a 3 strikes case. And for 2 years, I knew I was going back to prison, and I knew I was going back for a long time. That's when I found this group. And I was there was a gentleman that used to there was a gentleman who used not the guy who built the group, but the guy who used to run the group. His name was Brian. Every single day he was here. So I thought it was 7 days a week. He would conduct meetings in this. And I was so freaking pissed off when I came in because I understood the program. I understood what AA was all about. But I was pissed off because I got caught. And I got pissed off that now I got to go through this shit. And I'm thinking, I wasn't thinking at first that, man, you got to do everything you can do. You've got to do this and do this. I wasn't thinking like that. I was freaking pissed off. You can ask some of the people here. I used to throw my ankles up in the air. I said, you see these things? I will cut them off. If the judge says I'm dropping the case, I would cut them off and go straight to the liquor store. I used to tell them that every day. A lot of the people that are in this group today, I was so freaking pissed off. And what I needed is what these rooms provide, which is structure. And that's exactly what I got. Every single day. Same guy conducted the meetings every single day. Brian. And I'm telling you. And so after a couple months, I finally started to settle down. And I finally began to realize the shit that I was in. And so I got a sponsor, and that was probably not only coming here every day, but getting a sponsor was the smartest thing I'd ever done. He settled me down. He began slowly. I told him everything. You want to think that this meeting knew how pissed off I was? You could imagine what my sponsor was getting from me. He was getting some serious shit from me every single day. I was so freaking going off on him, this, that. But you know what? He was there for me. And I'm indebted to him. And after that, we started a program. We started to read. That was it. And he set me off on a structured program, and that's exactly what I needed. Structure. I had structure from this group. I had structure from my sponsor. I believed in God, and some of the turning points for me in recovery were huge. They were huge. One of the big turning points for me is honesty. I finally said, that's it. I'm going to be completely honest with this program. I'm going to do this program honestly because I know, because I've got a problem. I at least want to get it fixed before I go to prison. That's all I was thinking. I'm going to prison. I at least want to get myself fixed outside here with all of you before I go to prison. Because I knew I was going probably, who knew, for life maybe. I didn't know. And so I started on a program. I had that gift of desperation. And I'll tell you right now, that gift of desperation is part of what saved my life. I began to slowly go through the steps, and right away, getting right away into step 2 and 3. It was so important for me to figure out how to draw, how to draw my higher power, who I choose to call God, how I could bring that in to my recovery. I didn't know how to do it. And one of the things was we were getting on step 10 and step 11. You know, it was the 10th month and 11th month. And right then and there, I was listening to all of you guys. Everybody was talking about it was the 11th month. Everybody was talking about God. And it was like, and they were talking about page 86, 87, and 88 On Awakening. You know, every day they begin to, you divorce yourself from self-pity, from self-seeking, from dishonest motives. And then at the same time, I began to understand in step two that this was about me, that it wasn't just going to help me get rid of this drinking, that it was about me. It was about my understanding of my problems. I had already kind of began to understand it through step four, but then when I began to understand how I could begin to work on it through my higher power, that was when things began to change. Step two, step three, I really began to grab a hold of God, and I really began to grab a hold of putting the two together. And that was huge for me, because that was what allowed me to bridge the gap. I began to understand that there were principles that went along with the steps. I didn't understand the principles. And then all of a sudden, I began to understand that, or I began to put together the principles with the fruitages of the Spirit. And it was like, oh, wow, they're the same. Whoa, who knew? It's like, and all of a sudden I started to understand, well, okay, that kind of makes sense, these values. And then when I began to stop lying, my life began to change. When I began to have hope, and I began to have faith, and I began to put these things together, my life actually began to change. And then obviously through my sponsor, I went through this step four again. But one of the things for me, I did it from the time I got out of prison until this time right now. So that was what my sponsor focused on, because I'd already gone through step four like freaking 7 times. So he says, you're good on that. And so, but for me was the 5th step. This was the first time I was actually going to tell my sponsor everything. This is the first time that somebody was going to know everything about me. That blew me away. That was afterwards. I was on a pink cloud. I was calling him back for the next 3 or 4 days saying, oh, I forgot something. And he's going, all right, what'd you forget? And it was like, I couldn't stop. I wanted to let it all out. It was like a dam that just blew open. It was a dam. It was so incredible. But as incredible as that was, as high as I was off of that, one of the things that really helped me out was step 6 and 7. Remember back when I was growing up, being a people pleaser, I was inadequate about myself. I didn't feel good in my skin. One of the things that helped me was I had the ability to go back and find out why. When I reopened that all up, that 4th step, and I reopened up why I felt that way, understanding that I didn't have to. One of the things that helped me in step 6 and 7 was the fact that I began to change, to put that away, and then begin to put in, well, let's look at more meaningful relationships. What are you going to do with a more meaningful relationship? Instead of trying to beat somebody in a conversation or outwit somebody or say something to get the girl, let's talk about something that's more meaningful. And that was what I had worked through in my steps 6 and 7. That changed my life. That right there, it was at that point that I began to experience a little bit of peace. And I began to look in the mirror. And I was going, that's working for me. As I went into my amends, and I made amends to everybody, when they say that the miracle at that time begins to happen, it did. It did for me. I at that time, my life had changed. It was at that time that I was indebted to this group. I was indebted to my sponsor. I was indebted to other alcoholics who I used to call on a daily basis, and I was indebted to my higher power, who I choose to call God. I was able to begin to put it all together. That was the biggest thing for me, is the peace and content that I gained through all this. The tragedy that I went through, the terrors and the tragedies, all that crap I went through. Of course, I'd love to change it all. But where I'm at today is I feel good about myself today. Today, I'm at peace I'm at content. I have a lot of problems that I still deal with. Oh, on this case, I got sentenced back in June. I get off parole. I get off parole this June in 3 months. And that's it. I'm done. The only thing I got to do is I still have the interlock, the breathalyzer inside of my truck, but I'm done. It's a miracle. After all of the after literally over 1,000 AA meetings over the past 2 years, literally, there was a time I was going to 7 meetings a day, literally 1,000 meetings, and working a program, talking to a psychiatrist, going to IOP, going to California DUI classes with my sponsor constantly. My work was supporting me. After all of this, it's all going to be over here in a few months, and I can't believe it. I'm indebted to AA for my life. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What you're looking at is a mural. You know what I didn't believe that was gonna leave me? The obsession. I says, yeah, I can work through this. I can work through that. I can take care of all this. But the one thing that I absolutely didn't believe was going to happen was the obsession was going to go away. And it did. And I understand how it went away. And it's a freaking mind blower. And I give all thanks to my higher power, who I choose God. And that's about it. That's about all I got. And with that, Miss Nay, I wouldn't rather be anywhere else other than right here. And with that, I'm out.